Welcome back to the Sully Scoop, where three lifelong Husker bros dive in depth on all surrounding the new era of Husker football, where our cups never run dry of the Rule-Aid under head coach Matt Rule. Made by fans for fans with J-Saul, B-Saul, and T-Saul. We're back here on the Sully Scoop going over another win here for the Huskers. However, a 28-10 victory over Purdue. It got ugly, and it was ugly in the first half. It did not get opened up until the second half. I don't know how you fellas were feeling on this one, but we beat Colorado 28-10, and I felt a lot more comfortable watching that game than I did this one.
Well, JSO was pretty much the opposite of Colorado. It's like it was a snooze fest in the first half. I mean, not really because there was a lot of action. There was just no scoring. And then the second half, we just put the beat down. It was the opposite of Colorado. When it comes down to it, though, I mean, the kicking game is so important, and that's got to be like their number one fix before we come out for our next game.
Yeah, I think when you look at it here, I think the biggest issue was the kicking game. I think Ed Foley probably should have been left in West Lafayette after the game. I don't care that we won. There's no excuse. What is that? The last three field goal attempts we missed, and they weren't even close? Or was it four in a row now? And when you go back when Alvano was healthy, Alvano missed one. And I think he missed an extra point too earlier in the season. I mean, it's embarrassing to watch these kickers come out and just not have any confidence. And the coaching staff just continues to put them in a position to impact the game. You should have gone for it this week. You shouldn't have even attempted kicks there. You know, maybe the first time, but as soon as he missed it, don't trot him out again. I don't care if it's 4th and 18. Punt the ball or go for it because your kicking game is atrocious and it's going to impact the game one way or another. We had 2 kicks blocked. I'm sorry. So I think it's 4 in a row because of the 2 blocks and then the 1 wide. It's embarrassing at this point.
First of all, the one that was blocked, or you can't blame those blocked ones on the kicker there. Actually, I would be blaming the long snapper, which we did see. Thanks to Paul for shouting us out and, letting us know he was watching the change there at the long snapper, his old, former position. He noticed that they made a change there, and that's why we were able to, get the last kickoff and up through the uprights on the extra point. However, that is not the only place that the Huskers need to improve. 1 for 8 on third down efficiency, that is going to lead to possessions where you need to attempt a field goal or end up punting the ball. 1 for 8 is not a way to win a game. You got lucky that you were playing Purdue this week, but you're playing a team like Rutgers next week. So 1 and 8 against a 5-0 Rutgers is going to look a lot different than a 1 and 3 Purdue team you just beat. However, the offense was clicking on all cylinders to get 419 yards. They just could not capitalize and finish any drives.
Yeah, I think the not capitalizing was huge there, but let's go back and finish the shout out here to Paul. With everybody who came on and did their picks for the season, Paul is the only person right now who is 5-0 in his picks.
And I wish that was 5-0 on the field there. But yeah, shout out to Paul for noticing the long snapper thing. I mean, when we're talking about that last kick though, where it was a bad snap, and we were kicking from the 15-yard line or something. I mean, come on, guys. I don't care if it's a bad snap. He's still going to knock that through.
Well, it's not that he wouldn't have knocked it through. It's that it just got blocked. And that's, the line up
kick it higher, dude.
Like
you don't need distance at that point. Just kick it higher so they can't block it.
So you're blaming the kicker.
I'm blaming everybody out there.
Getting through. On the defensive line getting through, you're blaming on the kicker.
I don't think they got through. I think it was just a low kick because the guy panicked when he saw that it was a bad snap.
Very well could be. However, this was just an ugly game all around. The Huskers were lucky to come out on top there, I feel like. As the penalties, it was an ugly game from both sides. And we've seen it across the entire Big Ten. We've seen it across all of football. I think the refs are taking games over way too... The refs are too powerful in these games. And I think it's showing. It's almost like Vegas has their hands in their pockets because this is atrocious. 24 penalties in this game, and there was a bunch that were offsetting. So even more than that, the Huskers had 94 yards of penalties with 11, and Purdue had 165 yards in penalties with 13 penalties called. Let the kids play.
Well, Jay, so that's kind of where I'm going to, take that a little farther. And I'm going to agree with B-Saul's thing at the beginning of the season. This Purdue team, they're easily the worst Big Ten team. I'd pick UCLA to beat these guys, and I'd pick Minnesota to beat these guys. The only thing is they don't play Minnesota, and Minnesota has a tough schedule, so it's possible that Minnesota has a worse record than Purdue at the end of the season. But
Do you
the way
find
that
every
Purdue,
single
hold
way,
on,
every episode
hold
to
on,
just bring up Minnesota?
Jason, they suck. And you got to get that through your head. But here's what I'm saying. Because of the penalty game, Purdue didn't want to win this game. Every single pass, they were tackling the wide receiver. It's like, it's not even a tough decision of just taking and throwing the flag. You're talking about let the guys play. They're tackling our wide receivers. Every time we're throwing the ball, you have to throw that flag every single time. It's just the Purdue. I mean, you were talking about we were lucky and you were nervous and whatever. I wasn't nervous at all. I saw what team we were playing out there. I'm like, literally, if we get a touchdown, this game is over. And that's what it turned into.
Yeah, I think another takeaway here is Purdue at this point realizes the rest of their schedule is not going to be favorable after losing to us. Um, I don't see another win on the rest of their schedule, honestly. I think they're going to end 1-11. Their one win is going to be Indiana State. I mean, at this point, they're in such disarray. They fired their offensive coordinator after this Nebraska game. So Purdue tells me that they have sold all the stock on the season. They're not good. They're not expecting anything out of this season. I mean, they go on the road to Camp Randall next week against Wisconsin. Then it's on the road to Illinois. Then they have Oregon come to town, Northwestern come to town, and then they're on the road at Ohio State. Penn State comes to town at Michigan State, at Indiana. I don't see a win there for Purdue. Unfortunately, the best half of football that they played was against Nebraska in the first half, and I think that's going to be the best half of football they play the rest of the conference season here.
And I
Yeah,
mean,
and I do
Beasall, you're
want to
saying
say,
it was the best half of football. They still didn't score any points.
That's my point. I think they came out, they were even at half because of missed field goals on both ends, and they're not going to play well the rest of the conference season.
now I know we highlighted a lot of the negatives here at the beginning, but I do want to say there are some positives that came out of this game for the Huskers. I mean, Dylan Raiola looked like an upperclassman again in this game. I mean, he was playing Purdue, so you got to take it with a grain of salt, as Purdue's defense looked atrocious, but he averaged 9.5 yards per pass and he had a touchdown. I wish he would have had more touchdowns, but a couple were called back, unfortunately. But the best player when he takes the field for the Huskers is Ja'Cory Barney Jr. That kid has electric speed. It is game-changing speed. We need to just find a way to get him the ball more, and he has the ability to change every single aspect of the Nebraska football offense.
Totally agree,
Absolutely.
Jason. He's a playmaker. He's electric. I mean, get the guy the ball any way you can. And I totally agree with you about Raiola because, I mean, I was talking to Jazzy. We were texting back and forth, and he was saying, it was an ugly win, but at the end of the day, it was Raiola's first road game as a Husker. And so it wasn't really fair for us to expect a perfectly clean, perfect ball game. It was ugly. And you know what? At the end of the day, we won by 18 points. So we are in a different spectrum than where we were before because we played an ugly game. It was ugly as a fan. You don't feel like you played well, and you still won by 18 points. That sounds like Michigan. That sounds like Ohio State. They played an ugly game and still beat you by 3 scores.
Yeah, I think Barney, J-Cell, I agree with you on that. And T-Cell, I like that we're able to win these games that we should win. I want to see us win a few more to just solidify that. And I do think Barney needs to be more involved in all aspects of the game. I think he's fantastic. I think you can't teach speed, and I think he's a game changer, which I mean, you see that at all other schools that they get the game changers the ball and it impacts the game significantly. You can look at what Alabama did against Georgia. You got the ball to Ryan Williams, and that kid can play, and he, changes the game so quickly.
So how did you guys feel that we haven't been picking a pick six yet this year like we have in previous years? Yes, the Huskers have the best start since, 2016, or sorry, 2015. So how do you guys feel that we have seen our first pick six since not picking for a pick six, and we never saw a pick six when we were picking for them? It's almost like the defense has completely flipped. John Bullock came up there big and really set the tone for this team in the second half.
I think that's the
Jason, we
second
saw
pick
another
six
pick
of the
six.
season.
We saw one against Colorado.
You are right. You corrected me. Tommy Hill wasn't on the field, so I completely forgot about him. We need him back on the field. However, we're going to be playing, better offenses out there like a USC or an Ohio State. Luckily, we have Rutgers coming up here, but that is like against a Purdue. They're a running team. They're going to be a Big Ten type of football. But against other teams, we're going to need him out there rather than Sayer Wright.
And from news on the street, Tommy Hill should be suiting up this week against Rutgers.
But yeah, I mean, that's great news about Tommy Hill because we obviously didn't need him against Purdue. And I think that was kind of the coach's mindset is like, don't push him against Purdue. At the end of the day, they're Purdue. We'll handle them because our defense is still solid enough to take care of these guys. Now we have to see him do it against Rutgers, but we'll get to that point at the end of the show. We're still breaking down Purdue, talking about them. Dylan Raiola was out there taking the offense up and down the field. I would love for them to finish off a couple more drives instead of go for field goal attempts. But like, look, at the end of the day, if he's in the NFL, we're talking that we probably had 12 more points because we kicked 4 field goals, maybe even 5 because one of them would have been a super long one because we punted one that was definitely in field goal range. And there was another one that was in NFL field goal range. I wouldn't say college field goal range. And then, we missed 3. So we're talking 12 to 15 more points on top of that. That's a blowout. That's a fantastic play. The offense was dominating out there. You hate to get stalled on third downs. And that's what Jason was talking about when we started this segment. You gotta pick up the third and shorts, and you gotta stop committing penalties to push you back to second and long or first and long. You gotta take care of that. But at the end of the day, we almost doubled Purdue's yardage. I mean, we ended the day with 405 yards and Purdue ended with 224.
Yeah, I think your talk about the kicking game, I would love to see the team go for it and finish these drives, but the kicking game is still something that we need to talk about. I mean, you're talking on the season, 5 games in, we have missed 5 field goals on the year. We are perfect on extra points, 20 to 20, but you are 4 of 9 from kicking field goals, and it's anything 30 yards and over. You are 1 of 6 over 30 yards. You're 3 of 3 from 20 to 29 yards out. That
I know this is something
ridiculous.
I know this is something we even brought up last week, and even Chazzy on here, and you guys as well were included. When I was saying we should just start going for it, was you didn't want to hurt the kid's confidence. Let me tell you, letting the kid kick is going to hurt his confidence. The dude went 0 for 3 in this game and really was just a sham. It was a reason that the Huskers went in, I believe, up 3 at half. It was an atrocious game.
It was tied at 0 at half.
That is correct. It was tied at 0 at half. It was an atrocious game at half because we missed 2 field goals in the first half. This kid cannot kick. Get him off the field. If Alvano ain't ready, there's got to be somebody else in the program that can kick. Because I do remember when Ndamukong Suh ran out there and kicked the ball for us at one point when Bo Pelini was still the head coach at Nebraska. So there's got to be another option. These kids are athletes. There's got to be one kid on the team that can kick the ball. This guy is not the option. He cannot be in the game. Keep him from extra points if you want because he's perfect. But if it's going to come down to a field goal, that is what's going to lose us games. We've lost too many by 1 score to have a kid out there missing field goals. But another aspect of the game I want to bring up that we don't really touch on as much because, it's not really an electric part at this point in the season. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, 3 for 3 on punt returns, aka that means he just secured the ball, caught it, and that's all we need. That's taken a whole type of turnover that could happen out of the game. As long as you can secure the ball, I don't care where we get the ball, with the type of offense we have, with the quarterback that we have, anything could happen. So as long as we have the ball and we're not turning over, that is something I want to highlight. And congrats to him for catching every single one of them.
And there's something else I want to bring up about the special teams because, I mean, kicking is not the only issue. Downing punts. I want everybody on the team downing punts this week in practice. I don't care what your job is. Look for the football because Buschini had the perfect punt that would have pinned Purdue at the 1-yard line. And the guy ran to the back of the end zone. What the hell is he doing? And the other people were just standing there watching it roll into the end zone. And he had another one that had a potential to be inside at least the 10, but I think it was inside the 5 again, that just people weren't prepared for it. I mean, when you have a punter like Buschini and he's just dropping them right there, you got to down those punts. You can't just expect the kid to use the sideline or nothing, because at a certain point, the ball is just going to roll whatever way the ball wants to roll. You got to down those punts. Every other team in the country can down that punt. Every other team in the country would have downed us at the 1 yard line right there. And we're just lucky that our defense bailed us out. But at the end of the day, we could have had a safety. We could have been on the board right then and there.
Yeah, that was Dwight Boodle, the second there for you, T-Saw. Unfortunately, his brother went through the program, and he was a stud for the Huskers there, Boodle. But this was just an atrocious, lackadaisical. Why are you in the back of the end zone when you know as soon as it crosses the plane, it's a touchback? You got to be looking up at the ball. You got to be down. You're the first guy down there. You should be looking up to catch the ball and see where it's at. He was letting a guy block him and just ran with him to the back of the end zone. That does absolutely nothing. You might as well have just gone to the bench and sat outside.
Completely agree. It does do absolutely nothing for him. I think special teams really needs to be a focal point, especially this week. But it was nice to get out with a win and get back on track after the debacle we had against Illinois.
Totally agree. But at the end of the day, Beasel, I mean, when you break down beating Purdue, there's not really much you can say that's going to boost your confidence. Like, the expectation is we beat Purdue. I mean, we're talking a whole different thing if we lost to them or it came down to the final play. None of that happened. We closed the door in the fourth quarter. That's what good teams do. So at the end of the day, I'm not too concerned. I'll tell you more after this week when we talk like a team with an actual pulse comes to town.
I'll tell you what, I was concerned because we didn't even, get this game over with until the fourth quarter. This is Purdue. This is the team that Notre Dame went out and boat raced after they lost to Northern Illinois. That kind of scares me because Purdue hasn't played a close game with anyone but Indiana Tech. Who even is that? Indiana State? Who
Jay,
is that?
so
I don't
winning
even
by
know.
18 isn't really that close.
Well, winning by 18 when you score 21 in the fourth quarter is a pretty close game, especially when you go into halftime tied with the team that you should be blowing out. Especially
there was
when
no chance. There was no chance they were going to win that game. There was none, Jaso. You don't even have to think about it in your wildest dream. There was no chance that Purdue was going to win that game. They don't have a pulse. They tackled our receiver every play. They didn't want to win. They don't look like they're disciplined at all. They're not well coached. I mean, at the end of the day, B-So, this is a question for you since you picked them to be the worst team.
Like every
B-So,
single, you
are
sound
you
like every
picking
person that would have
Walters
said
to
that
get
Notre Dame couldn't lose to Northern Illinois. You would have said the same thing. But if you leave a terrible team like that in the game, you just let them linger around. At a certain point, especially when you're on the road, your team is going to buckle. We've seen that year in, year out for the Huskers. They cannot go into the fourth quarter up 4 points against a team that they are a 10.5-point favorite against.
And we won by 18. So we beat that. We were supposed to win by 10.5. We won by 18.
And how did that happen against Illinois when we let a team like that linger around?
Well, here's what I'm going to tell you, Jason. I don't really give a rat's butt about any of this stuff because we won the freaking ball game. All right.
And I'm saying we got lucky.
In years prior, we played a fantastic game with Michigan. Woohoo! Hats off. We only lost by 9 to Ohio State. What did that do for us, Jason? Where did that land us?
And how do we end up losing those games? Because if you're going to go out there and you're going to win a game, you can't let it linger around until the fourth quarter. Unfortunately, if the Huskers would have played anyone else on their schedule from here on out but Purdue, they would have lost that game.
And the good news is we were playing Purdue. On to the next. Let's fix the mistakes that are obvious.
Which scares me and should scare you for the rest of the season when you're looking forward. We have 2 more wins to get to a bowl game. 2 more wins.
Jay, so this was a bye week. This was let's just jog out a couple plays,
had to be the
see what's going on. It was a freaking bye week.
That was the ugliest bye week I've ever seen.
It doesn't have to be a pretty bye week as long as it's treated like a bye week and you take care of business like a bye week. Then it's all good. It's all good in the hood.
Didn't take care of business. What's ugly about this is we had 0 turnovers and we went into half tied with arguably going to be the worst team in the Big Ten. Where does that put the Huskers at?
Only because of the field goal kicker. They'll get that fixed, Jason. You have to have confidence.
This kid's never going to have confidence. He went 0 for 3. He's 1 for 5.
You said it was the snapper. Hold on. You said it was the snapper. You didn't say it was the kicker.
He is 1 for 5 on the year. And you're telling me you got to build his confidence? Build his confidence somewhere else because he doesn't deserve to be on the field. He doesn't even deserve to have a jersey at this point. But moving forward, you can't let a team linger like this. This is a terrible team, arguably the worst team in the Big Ten. They're 1-3, and you went into halftime tied. That is not a good look, and that is not a good look when you got USC, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Iowa all left on your schedule.
So it's good that you played this type of game against Purdue is all I can tell you. Because you're right. If you come out here and miss 3 field goals against Ohio State, they're not going to give you a second chance. So figure it out now or forever hold your peace because it's either fix it or stop kicking.
Yeah, the kicking has been atrocious, and I do have to agree if we play another team like that, T-Cell, it could be ugly here with the rest of the year. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, we're only 2 games away from a bowl game, and that is really what the Huskers need to strive for this year, as the extra 20 practices are huge for the development for the young guys in the program.
And also, too, just like building up confidence in the fan base, in the media, and all that, too.
Who gives a rat's ass about the media and the fan base? It's all about the guys on the field that are going out there and playing. What? Because I'm going to show up either happy or sad. I don't control a win.
Me and B-Sol would like to disagree with you there, J-Sol, because just so all the scoopers know, me and B-Sol were part of the crowd that got Mike Riley fired. And you're all welcome for that because we were at that terrible Ohio State debacle in the freezing cold, watching them drop freaking 60 points at us by halftime. We walked out with half that freaking stadium, and that was the end of Mike Riley. So, J-Sol, yeah, you do have to keep the fans happy and the media happy. Because at the end of the day, if the fans aren't in the stands, you're gone at Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, you do have to keep them happy, and I will say that is the only game I remember walking out of during my years
Only
as
one.
a fan here. And so it does hit home a little bit there. But let's move on from Purdue. Again, worst team in the Big Ten. We beat them. It was ugly, but we won. What did you guys see this week in week 5 around college football that surprised you?
Well, I did want to say what surprised me, but unfortunately, at this point in the season, it did not surprise me, and none of it has surprised me. We're talking about 2 huge games and huge calls here. We're talking about Miami against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech scores a touchdown, called it on the field. You go to the replay, even the guys in the booth say you can't see where the ball's at. They come back out on the field, ACC refs, because Miami is their golden child for their chance to make the playoff. They come out and they overturn a call where you can't even see the football and rule it an incomplete pass. Miami wins the game. I couldn't believe my eyes. First of all, I was shocked that they just ruled it a touchdown on the field because it was Miami that was playing in this game and they had Miami losing at that point. They go into a review and all of a sudden they flip it. I want to know who made the decision on that because they absolutely screwed Virginia Tech in this game. I want to know there should be a name next to every single one of these calls that is overturned. And then we scroll down here on the games that happened for the week. We're talking in the Big Ten, Michigan, Minnesota. They call an offsides on the kickoff, on an onside kick. This is a straight line down the field. The guy is on the line watching it and could see the ball kicked. I want to know how he threw that flag immediately when you can watch the replay. Anyone can. And I don't know why this is an unreviewable play. They were onside. Every single one of them was onside. However, Minnesota did recover the football. I am out here and I am saying that they threw that flag before anything even happened. They were going to throw it regardless just to make sure the Golden Boy in Michigan won the game.
Well, Jay Salt, I agree with you on both of those things. I'm going to tell you this. I'll touch on yours, and then I'll talk about my most surprising. Number one, if they called that a touchdown for Virginia Tech against Miami, I was going to lose my freaking mind because that was the same exact play that happened with us in Illinois. and they ended up calling it the same way. So I feel like we got screwed just a little bit less
They actually did
because
not
it
call it
played
the
out the
same
same
way.
way.
They
Yeah,
did
they
not
did.
call it the same. No, they did not, because against Illinois, they called it an interception. Against Virginia Tech, they called it an incomplete pass. Two
But
different
at the
calls
end of the
there.
day, it was a touchdown originally
So it's
ruled
at
on
the end of the
both.
day, it's not the same call.
But it is. It was a touchdown, and then it
It's
got
not.
overruled. Dude, they probably would have
It's not
called
the
it an
same call.
interception on Miami, but the game was over, so it didn't even matter. That was the last play of the game.
They literally called it an incomplete pass. It
Who
is not
cares
the
what they
same
called? The
call.
game
It is
ended.
not the same call. If you go back,
It's
Illinois
a
took
different
over the
call.
ball. The Illinois got the ball
Beasel,
and got
nobody
a
asked you.
touchback. Unfortunately, the Huskers were driving at that time. If it was an incomplete pass, we would have had a field goal opportunity coming. However, would we wanted to see a field goal opportunity? Probably not, because Illinois would have gotten the ball at like about the 40-yard line instead of the 25. But it is not the same call.
Okay. Irregardless, moving on to the other game. Minnesota totally got screwed against Michigan. The guy was on sides. They recovered the ball at the 38-yard line. They were practically already in field goal range, down by 3 with, I can't remember how much was left, like a minute or a minute and a half. I mean, Minnesota had a chance to win the game or send it to overtime, and they took that away from us as fans. And that sucks, because college overtime and last minute drives is where it's at, you know? But they took it away from us because at the end of the day, Michigan has a shot at the playoffs. Minnesota does not. Miami has a shot at the playoffs. Virginia Tech does not. We see how they're calling these games. And tick-tacky calls, they're going to give it to the seeded team because it makes the conference look better at the end of the day. The only one who didn't get that was the SEC, apparently, who just let Kentucky go in there and beat Ole Miss somehow. That was my most surprising of the week. I had Ole Miss as pegged as this team that was going to compete for the SEC, and losing to Kentucky at home tells me you ain't competing for the SEC. You're a fraud. You're not going to the playoff. You have to win out to go to the playoff at this point, because you just lost to an unranked team at home. And I don't think that Ole Miss can do that in the SEC. They're not going to run the table. So they're done. They're cooked. Put a fork in them.
No team in the SEC is going to run the table, and I would disagree with you, as Kentucky is a good team. I know they weren't ranked, but they did take
They're
Georgia
still not
to the
ranked,
ropes.
Jason.
They had Georgia
They're
on the
3
ropes.
and 2.
Exactly. They had Georgia on the ropes. They play in the toughest conference
I mean,
in college
exactly.
football.
So losing 31-6 to South Carolina is a good loss then, huh?
So I'm saying South Carolina is not that terrible of a team, and it was at the beginning of the season.
You said the complete opposite thing last week with South
That is a
Carolina, or
lie.
2 weeks ago, when South Carolina should beat LSU, and they're like, South Carolina is one of the worst teams in college football. LSU sucks.
Well, Tisa, let me tell you something. The SEC is kind of evenly matched around the field. Kentucky can probably take out any single one of them. It's any given day at this point. That's why so many of them are ranked. You'll see them start to flip-flop their numbers. But that's why Alabama was able to beat Georgia. However, Georgia barely beat Kentucky. This Ole Miss team will be able to compete against an Alabama and a Georgia as well.
So you're picking
Yeah,
Ole Miss to go undefeated from here on out.
No, I think they play in one of the
That's-
toughest conferences that I don't think that any team is going to go undefeated in the SEC.
No, that's not what he's saying, and I agree with him. I think Kentucky is better than people are giving them credit for. Kentucky had Georgia on the ropes, like JSL said, and really came out and handled business against Ole Miss, who I assume was just looking past Kentucky, thinking that they were the best thing since sliced bread, like Lane Kiffin has them believing there.
So Beasel, then mistake me if I'm wrong, or correct me if I'm mistaken, but then
mistake me if I'm wrong.
But so are you saying that you want Scott Frost to be our head coach again at the University of Nebraska?
No, I do not want Scott
You
Frost
said
to be our head coach.
that they had Georgia on the ropes and played a respectable game, and they all should get sprinkles after that game. Is that not what
That's
you were
not the
saying?
only thing. Kentucky actually beat a top 10 team in Ole Miss at number 6.
Well, Ole
so
Miss is a
therefore Scott
fraud.
Frost
They're
is-
obviously not a top 10 team.
So Georgia's not a top 10 team for being on the ropes with Kentucky then.
Well, I'm saying being on the ropes and finishing them off are two different things. We saw Scott Frost's team. He had everybody on the ropes that one year, and we ended with 3 wins.
I'll mistake you when you're wrong there, T-Cell, and I will mistake you now. You're wrong on this. Kentucky is a valid team. They are a good team. They're going to go bowling. They're going to have 8 wins this year. That is a quality team, and you can't say otherwise.
I agree, Jay Saul. I do think they are a better team than people are giving them credit for at 3-2. Um, my biggest surprise for the week, guys, we are 5 weeks in on the season. And if I were to ask you who has the most rushing touchdowns in college football through 5 weeks in the season, who would you guess? What team would you guess? Would you guess a Big Ten team like Iowa? Would you guess a Rutgers team that's been running the ball down everybody? Even a Michigan team's been running at everybody. Who would
I
you
would guess
guess has the
Rutgers.
most? You would guess Rutgers.
Yeah.
Well, Teasel, I would like to tell you that the player with the most rushing touchdowns in college football through 5 weeks right now is Ashton Jeanty for Boise State. He has 13 touchdowns and 845 yards on the ground so far this year.
Well, B, so there's an asterisk next to that.
He is averaging over 10 yards a carry, T. So I don't want to hear there's an asterisk next to
There's
that.
definitely an asterisk. The dude is playing in the Mountain West Conference. How many touchdowns rushing did he have against Oregon? That's what I want to know.
So I got to say that's an atrocious take right there. I mean, he
Three.
is going out and
3
he
touchdowns
is
against
having a
Oregon.
stellar game. He has had a stellar career or year, I should say. But I guess he didn't get a single touchdown against Portland State. So is he really that good is what it comes down to.
They didn't need him to. He only touched the ball 11 times and they probably sat him the rest of the game. There was no reason for him to get hurt against Portland State. He scored 3 touchdowns against Oregon, against Georgia Southern. 6 tutties.
Well, yeah, dude.
Congrats.
We dropped 50 on them and they dropped 55 on us or something like that.
And that's exactly what happened here.
He scored
56 to 45. 56 to 45. Georgia Southern was able to put up.
Against JSOL's foregone claimed Pac-12 champs this year, 4 touchdowns against Washington State this past week.
Well, B-So, if you would have watched the game, the guys in the black and white stripes really took it over.
And 59 yards on the ground. 259 yards on the ground.
That is because the guys in the stripes came out and they just changed the game completely into Boise State's favor. Because
I got to ask you a quick question, Jason.
Boise State was at home on the blue field.
How did they come
penalties?
Out?
They had 9 penalties on Washington State.
So
9 penalties to 4.
Penalties were the reason that the running back, Mr. Jeanty, put up 259 yards, right? Penalties equate to rushing yards.
Let me get into this.
Penalties equate to rushing yards. So they even out. So that's where it comes from. No, that man put on a clinic.
Are you going to let me get into it? Or are you just going to keep talking?
10 yards a carry, 259 yards.
Congratulations. Now let me get into it. Why does that change it? Because when the penalties come against your team, and you're unable to get the other guys off the field, get your defense off the field, guess what? It's going to tire down your defensive line, and that is where they are able to start to get a push. And in the second half, that's where it really opened up for this Jeanty guy. And guess what? Who cares? The refs overtook this game like they've been doing in every other college football game. It is not just Jeanty.
Bisa, I'd also like to remind you, too, that Oregon was part of the Pac-12 who wasn't really known for stellar defenses. I'd like to see this Jeanty guy do that in the Big Ten.
T-Sol, did you not just ask me how many touchdowns he had against Oregon? You said, I want to know how many he had there.
Yeah.
If he's got 13 on the season, blah, blah, blah. He had 3 against them.
I bet you he doesn't even, at the end of the season, he's not the guy who scores the most rushing touchdowns on Oregon. I bet you somebody beats that.
He's not. You mean against
Oregon?
Let's
look it up. Yeah, against Oregon. I bet you somebody rushes for more than 3 touchdowns against Oregon. Oregon's not a good defense. They're trying to outscore you, and that's not going to work in the Big Ten. And Big Ten teams play completely different. So if you're telling me this Boise State guy went for 3 touchdowns against Oregon, That tells me some Big Ten teams are licking their chops and they're going to be dropping more than 3 on these guys. And maybe they share the load. Maybe they have 4 guys get a touchdown rushing, but there's going to be teams who are rushing for more than Boise State against Oregon is what I'm telling you. And Washington State, I mean, come on. It's not like they're a good team. It's not like they're a good offense. So to me, Boise State, there's an asterisk next to that. They're playing in the Mountain West. They played Oregon. It's not like they played Michigan. If they rushed for 3 touchdowns against Michigan, I'd give them a little more credit. No, Oregon, come on. They're not a defensive program.
I'm just telling you, when you go through it, it is surprising that it is Boise State who has the leading rusher in college football at the moment and the most rushing touchdowns. He is 200 yards above the guy in second place there, and he's got 3 more touchdowns than the guy in second place as well. So it is interesting to see that it is from Boise State who leads in rushing at the moment.
Well, I agree with you there. I mean, it's surprising it's Boise State, but I'm still giving them an asterisk.
He also has 82 carries on the year there, Biso.
Okay. And
that's probably double the next closest guy to him.
So the second running back in terms of yardage is Caleb Johnson from Iowa at 685, who also has 82 yards on the carries on the year.
Let's go to Iowa played.
Hold on, because you brought up a point here. Let's go to the third in terms of yardage. That would be the North Carolina running back, who's run for 658 yards on the season, has 114 carries. So don't come out here telling me that this boy is carrying the rock a lot more than everybody else. When you go down the list, the next 3, so running back number 3, 114. 4, 83 carries. 5, 97 carries. 6, 103 carries. 7, 82 carries. You have to get all the way down to the Michigan running back, Kalen Mullins, at 77. That is the next guy who has less carries than him.
So there's your guy, Biso. There is your guy. On November 2nd, Oregon will go to the Big House against Michigan. And that's my pick for the team that's going to have a runner score more than 3 rushing touchdowns against Oregon.
That's as a team my or as pick. As a solo rushing?
He said solo rusher.
Well, I'll take either or. Pick. With Orgy out there, Orgy's going to be taking
4 rushing touchdowns for Michigan. 4 rushing.
Does it matter if does it matter if it's a quarterback or a running back?
No, it doesn't matter. 4 rushing touchdowns against Oregon. And I bet you Oregon loses that ball game too.
The only thing that could change that is Oregon. That's a late in the year type of game. Oregon's going to be clicking on all cylinders with their offense. So if their offense is clicking,
you forget
they're going to be able to score
Oregon
quick.
Is not a cold weather team. They're playing in the Big House. You went to the Big House last year or 2 years ago in November. You remember? Was the sun shining that day, Jason? I can't remember.
So, do you know where Oregon is located?
Do you know where Michigan's located?
It is on the same plane.
It's completely different. Completely different.
It just isn't.
Oh, it is. He knows his mild Oregon winters. He's going up there to the tundra. He's going up there to Michigan, the Big House. And he's going to be cold. He being the team Oregon. And they're not used to playing in Big Ten weather in November. The Big Ten scheduled that game intentionally.
Well, as much as I'd like to hear T-Cell get into another love fest with somebody besides Minnesota, let's get down to Nebraska versus Rutgers, playing T-Cell's favorite ex-boyfriend, Ethan Callie McManus,
your guy,
the old Minnesota quarterback who T-Cell thought was going to get PJ Fleck fired, but did not.
And he should have, so I mean, well, that's a different argument for a different day. I mean, before we even do that, let's just talk about J-Sol, number 1 here. His quote unquote worst team in the Big Ten is actually looking like they might be one of the best teams in the Big Ten. So, Jason, what do you have to say about that?
They haven't played anyone,
but are they or are they not in the top 25 right now?
They are, but I think there's some teams that shouldn't be in the top 25 either as well. But I do want to bring up that the average temperature for Oregon, all right, I'll give you the high and the low for November. The high is 51.1 and the low is 33.6. Now, if you
That's
want
in
to know
November.
the high and the low, yes, the high and the low is 48 to 31. 48 to 31 in Ann Arbor. That is not a huge difference. That is on the same plane there, T-Saw.
I'd be betting on the low there, J-Sol. It's a completely different animal. They're going up against Michigan in the big house, in the cold weather, against a team that likes to run it at you with their offensive line and stuff you with the tough defense with their D line. That game spells trouble for Oregon.
Now, how many other games spell trouble for them?
Quite a few there, J-Saw, because they don't have history with most of these guys. But we're not talking about Oregon right now in your love fest because you picked them to win the Big Ten like an idiot.
I actually picked Ohio State to win the Big Ten. I did not pick Iowa to be in the Big Ten championship like an idiot like you.
You just had them in the college football playoff.
And they still got a chance. They still have a chance.
So does Florida State.
No, Bissell, unfortunately, I have written off Florida State. Florida State will not be in the college football playoff. That is by one of two teams that have fallen out and will not make it. The other one is Washington State. Unless they run the table the rest of the way and every other group of five loses some games.
Yeah, well,
they lost to a ranked team. They lost to a ranked team there, Bissell. Your Utah
what about Utah?
Is completely done.
Utah
is completely done. Completely done.
I could
Cam Rising's not the quarterback. I picked them on the premise that Cam Rising would be their quarterback.
They're still in your list.
I could tell you right now, Iowa will not make the college football playoffs.
Iowa is 3-1.
I don't even give a shit what their record is right now. I told you Iowa's a 7-win team, and I'm sticking to it.
7 wins. They're halfway there, B-Saw. They're halfway there.
Okay. We're a third of the way through the season.
Iowa's probably an 8 or 9 win team.
UCLA, Northwestern, Michigan State, Maryland. I mean, there's your 7 right there. And then they got a terrible Washington this year. Good luck not beating them. The only other team that Iowa could potentially is going to lose to for sure, guaranteed, is Ohio State.
Sorry, I meant Iowa's a 9 or 10 win team. That's what I meant. And I'm betting that they're a 10-win team.
And if they're a 10-win team, they're in the playoff.
So
not if they get embarrassed.
Can we just talk about this part here?
They lost to Iowa State by 1. They haven't been embarrassed yet. Iowa State is a top 25 team.
Michigan's quarterback, Alex Ojale, has a better
That is
QBR,
not how you pronounce his name.
Has a better QBR than Cade McNamara. And Ojale throws all of 6 passes a game.
So it's easier to have a better writing.
Correct there, Bissell. Or are you trying not to get blocked?
That is
blocked
easier.
And flagged.
That is easier to have a better rating when you're playing for Michigan, who runs the ball every time. Then all of a sudden you got the DBs crashing down.
I'm sorry, Jason.
Donovan
What the
Edwards.
hell? What do you think Iowa does every play? Or do you think they're dropping back with Cade McNamara throwing it 50 fucking times a game? No, it's drop back and run the ball. They do the same damn thing that Michigan does. Cade McNamara sucks. He doesn't even grip the laces when he throws. He's no lace Cade.
Well, why did you bring up that they're only passing the ball 4 times a game there? I do want to let you know that Cade McNamara actually has a rating of 117.
That means nothing to me.
Wow. Do you want to know what his rating will be by the end of the season? 46.
Jason, he has 3 passing touchdowns and 2 picks. He sucks. Write him off.
There it is. T-Cell's on board. Cade McNamara is a crappy quarterback.
They have an easy schedule. He's a crappy quarterback. They have an easy schedule. Okay. They'll get exposed.
I never said he's going to the Heisman Trophy
ceremony. Who is
ceremony.
Iowa's backup quarterback? It looks like it is Bill Sullivan. Iowa's backup quarterback has thrown 1 pass attempt completed one pass attempt for 2 yards, and it's B. Sullivan. B. Sull is playing for his least favorite team in the country.
It's called the long game here.
Because B. Sullivan is the backup, there's a reason we are still seeing Cade McNamara on the field for him.
It's the long game. You need to replace Cade after his confidence is shot.
Okay, so you want to talk about the complete difference here? Orgy's rating is only a 108, but Orgy has completed, attempted 36 passing attempts, while McNamara's out there has 102. McNamara also has a 62% completion rating, while your Orgy guy has a 55%, and he's playing for a way better team in Michigan.
I don't know.
Do you want me to continue?
Blocked.
Do you want me to continue with these stats?
Scoopers, Jay Sull has just been blocked. He's been muted. He's been kicked off the podcast. You can expect that he will never be back on here with us.
Do you want me to continue with Orgy's got 3 touchdowns and 1 interception on he has one interception on 36 passing attempts. He's only completed 20 passes on the year.
20 for 30 is a lot better than Cade's 10 for 107.
Cade is actually 64 for 102.
Let's give Cade McNamara a round of applause for being a passable quarterback for once. But again, we're 5 games into the season, and I expect that to go from passable to not.
Well, let's also just point out the fact that Jay Sull's trying to rip apart this Michigan quarterback. And look, his stats might not be pretty, and I don't care if they're pretty, and I prefer that they're not pretty. But at the end of the day, the worst part about that quarterback is always going to be his name. And I'm glad that our coach didn't go out there and recruit a quarterback with that name.
Well, talking about names, let's get back on track here. How do you guys feel that Nebraska will handle the Scarlet Knights and their new quarterback, Ethan Callie McManus, who we are very familiar with?
Yeah, unfortunately, Callie McManus has had a lot of luck against the Huskers. It is not looking good with the Rutgers sitting 4-0. However, this one is home in Lincoln. It's really going to come down to the kicking in this game because Rutgers is going to have a good defense, going to be able to lock up this offense when we're driving the ball, hopefully on their side of the field. Are we going to have a kicker out there? Is Hone going to be out there kicking? Is Alvano going to be out there kicking? Or is Brett Maher going to be dressed up in somebody else's, uniform? Because we are going to need a kicker if it's going to come down to this game. I got a close one in this one. I'll tell you that much, especially when you got Monongarai. He is going to be able to run down the throat of our defensive line because our defensive line is straight up atrocious.
Yeah, Jason, I'm with you right there. I'm not saying that they're atrocious, but that's going to be the key of the game is can we stop Rutgers' run game? Because that's their strength. I don't care about Callie McManus. The guy is ass. The guy sucks. We all know who he is. But at the end of the day, he doesn't have to do much if they're running down our throat with their running back. So to me, that's the key of the game. I don't even care what our offense does because if we can't stop them from running the ball, we ain't going to win. So can we stop Marunagay or whatever you said there, Jason?
Monongai. That's what I said.
Yeah, I think Rutgers defense will be a solid test for us. I don't think their offense is as talented as other teams we played this year. I'm hoping our defense got a wake-up call. I'm hoping special teams is practice this week. I don't expect this game to be all that close at the end of the day. I expect this to look very similar to that Colorado game is kind of where my head's at.
Which I think is a weird take, seeing as Rutgers hasn't really played a close game with anybody. However, they did just beat Washington, who is a run-heavy team, in a close one because it was a running after running.
Hold on.
You're going to bring up Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech had Miami on the ropes, and Virginia Tech has a win in that game too, I would say. Virginia Tech has an asterisk next to that win, or you could put an asterisk next to the win for Miami. Doesn't matter. Virginia Tech is a lot better than we thought they were.
So you just told me that Rutgers didn't play a close game. They're 4-0, and their last two wins are a 21-18 win and a 26-23 win. So how can you tell me they haven't played a close game when they've won those two games by 3 points? And
It
don't come
wasn't a
out
close
here and
game till
say
the fourth quarter.
don't come out here and tell me that it's because they blew out a Howard team to start the season.
A win is a win, and I believe that's what Tiso said at the beginning of this. Listen, they blew out of Howard, they blew out in Akron, they got the job done, and they were able to hold Virginia Tech to 26 points. Go look what Virginia Tech did against Miami, and go look what Washington has done this year. Washington is a good team. They're a run-first team. They have a big bulldog, or I should say bowling ball in the backfield there for Washington, that they were able to come out on top. That was a quick game. That is why it was a low scoring game. And that defense was able to hold them to 18 points.
Hold on. Washington's a good team. You mean the Washington team that you picked to only have 4 wins this season? That Washington team?
I don't believe I ever said that.
That Washington team that you said was going to have only 4 wins and was going to be atrocious. That
I never said
Washington
that
team is good.
I never said they were going to have 4 wins.
You did. And I
I
honestly
believe
think
you
you're
said that like 20 minutes ago.
I think you're well on your way to being right on it. So don't tell me that Washington's a good team. Rutgers can't score. If the defense can hold up against their run game and put the game in Callie McManus's hands, Nebraska's going to win easy.
I don't know about win easy, B. So it seems like we're going to have to grind for every win from here on out for the season. So I'm not saying win easy. I'm not even sure what I'm picking in this game. I just know it's going to come down to Rutgers rush attack, our rush defense, and then how does our offense come out? Can we finish drives? Can we pick up a third down when we're at the 20-yard line?
So speaking of that, before we get into the picks on it, let's just give a quick update here. For total points off on the season, last week with the Purdue win 28-10, T-Sull is in third place, being off a total of 99 points so far. J-Sull is in second, being off 91 points, and I am in front, being off a total of 54 points. I do want to mention that Chazzy, who seems to think his picks are never wrong, was off a total of 8 points this week. Which was second to myself, who was off at 1 point total. J-Sull had 14, T-Sull with 15 this past week.
And let's just all remember too, Scoopers, that B-Soul's the one keeping these notes. He's changing them. He probably switched my picks with his in the middle of the game when he saw it was going my way. And so now I ended last when really it was supposed to be him.
You can play the tape there, T-Sull. I got nothing to take away from you.
But I mean, if we're jumping out, we're doing predictions right now. I just don't know if I've seen enough this season to be confident about this Rutgers game. I mean, Rutgers is undefeated. For whatever reason, the media doesn't like them. They're not ranked. You know, ESPN is telling me that we have a 66% chance to win this game, which I think is crazy based on us losing to Illinois. I think we had a 73% chance to win that one. I think Rutgers is a little bit better at what Illinois does. I think Rutgers, if they played Illinois head to head, they would probably win that game. So I just don't know that I can say I'm confident, but at the end of the day, we should have beat Illinois. We self-destructed. We had the game in hand. So like we should be able to handle Rutgers and have this game in hand, but I just don't think we're there yet. I'm picking a close game. I'm going to pick Rutgers to beat us 21-20.
You are picking a loss, T-Sull?
I'm picking a loss, B-Sull. I just don't know if I've seen enough, and I think Rutgers is a better team than what they're getting respect for.
Absolutely. I think this one is going to come down to the kicking here, there, B-Sull. I think it's going to be a tight Big Ten style football. I think it's going to be a lot of what we saw in the first half against Purdue. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. However, with how the Huskers did against Purdue, it kind of shocked me that they were able to, get something going after they were able to tire out the Purdue defense and get something across there. But Rutgers has a lot better of a defense. I think that the Huskers are going to be able to come out on top, 14-10. And I don't think that they get any field goals here. I think Rutgers is able to get a field goal across the board, but the Huskers are probably going to end with 2 missed field goals and leaving this game into a close one. But I have the Huskers winning by 4.
Yeah, I don't think our offense has been a problem, and I don't think they'll have any issue moving against Rutgers. I think the issue is going to come down to, like we said, finishing the drives, closing it out when you get down to the red zone, and actually scoring as opposed to missing field goals. If they correct those, none of these games we've been in are close. I mean, this offense is moving well against everybody, so I'm not concerned in terms of that. I think our defense is going to come out. They need to come out fired up against Rutgers. Rutgers, you know what they're going to do. They're going to try and run the ball at you. I actually have the Huskers winning 28-13.
I do want to notice that something I find is actually surprising. The Huskers don't have the worst percentage in the Big Ten for kicking. It is Penn State. And is that going to be the part of the football game, the part of the game that gets James Franklin fired if Penn State doesn't flip it around this year?
I think there's a lot that'll get James Franklin fired, and I think it all ties back to the fact that he has not been able to win the big games while being at Penn State. But he couldn't win the big games at Vanderbilt, so I don't know why they hired him.
Well, I'm glad we got our picks in. Hopefully the Huskers can come out with another win on top with 2 people picking a win here on the Sully Scoop. We got a Debbie Downer at the top here, T-So. But thanks for joining us for another episode of the Sully Scoop as we get ready for Rutgers coming to Lincoln, Nebraska for the homecoming game on 3 o'clock on Saturday, October 5th on Fox Sports 1. Don't forget to follow and like, and you can catch us at Sully_Scoop on Twitter or at our website, thesullyscoop.com.
Go Big Red.